I'm here today to wrap up the first part of April, so I'm going to be talking about the books that I read during the first 2 weeks of April and also my thoughts on them. Basically just a typical wrap up. Now I have, I think, 9 books to talk about, which is a lot, so I'm just going to get started right away. The first book I'm going to talk about is an ebook that I received from NetGalley for an honest review, and that is Inside the OBriens by Lisa Genova. You may recognize the name Lisa Genova because she's also the author who wrote Still Alice, which has been turned into a movie, which I haven't seen yet. It's a catastrophe. I liked Still Alice a lot. I read it some years ago and I really liked it, so I was interested to read this book as well. This one deals with a man who is a police officer and he suffers from Huntington's disease. Yes, that's what it's called. Basically, that means that he cannot control his body, which is not very good, especially when you are a police officer. I was interested to see how Lisa Genova deals with this topic because it's basically the same book as Still Alice but with another disease. So I was interested to see how she would write the same book but with a different disease, and she actually did so very well. I will say though that I didn't like this book as much as Still Alice. There is something about Still Alice that is just beautiful. This one was beautiful as well, but in a different way, and I ended up giving it 3 stars because it was really good. And I loved how it educated me in this disease and what it does to you. Next, I picked up Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell, which I have been reading for the past 2 months, or maybe just 1 month. And yeah, I have been struggling with this story because I read halfway a month ago and then I couldn't continue because I didn't want to. This book frustrated me a lot. This book comes with a lot of genres and a lot of time periods and a lot of different characters, and I had such a hard time appreciating these stories because I didn't have any interest in them whatsoever. I think that if I had liked the characters and the stories more, then I would have appreciated this book a lot more, but I didn't. That's what frustrated me the most, but also the middle chapter, which is basically incomprehensible. It is written in colloquial language 10 times. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically it was not understandable to me as a non-English speaker, mother tongue. You know what I mean? I had some problems with this book. I'm happy that I finished it because I did like seeing how everything wrapped up beautifully in the end. But I couldn't really give this book more than 2.5 stars, exclusively because of its uniqueness and its special take on fiction. I like that. Next, I read another ebook from NetGalley, and that is The Invention of Wings by Sue Monk Kidd. Now, this one has been out for some years, I think, but it has now been published in paperback, and that's why I received a review copy. This book was so beautiful. I didn't really know what I was going into, but I had heard of this author a lot and I had heard beautiful things about her writing, so I wanted to read at least one book by her, and I did, and I'm so happy because this book was just really beautiful. It deals with 2 women, one who is a white woman and one who is a black woman, and they live in the southern states in America in the 20th century, I believe, or maybe it's the 19th century. We hear about their relationship because the white woman is the owner of the black woman, so the black woman is her slave, and basically the white woman doesn't want for her to be her slave, she wants for the black woman to be free. So it has a lot of conflicts in it, this book, and it deals with racism, with slaves, with blacks versus whites. I ended up giving this book 4 stars because even though I really liked the story and the beautiful writing, I feel like I have read so many stories like these before, so that's what took it down a notch for me and made me give it 4 stars in the end, but definitely worth a read. Afterwards, I picked up the Booksplosion book of the month of April, and that is The Queen of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. I love this book. This was such a great fantasy story. This is adult fantasy and it deals with a main character called Kelsey. Kelsey is to become the Queen of the Tearling, when she is 19, and in the beginning of the book, when we meet her, she has just turned 19. It's not the story in itself that made it so fantastic in my eyes, it's the fact that it has every element that I appreciate in a fantasy story. It has a phenomenal main character, it has some breathtaking scenes in it, and it has a very interesting plot with a lot of different twists to it, and I just really appreciated this book. I will say I went into it not really expecting too much because this book has received a lot of mixed reviews, but honestly I don't understand why that is because this is so good. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I definitely want to see more from Erica Johansson, and I'm definitely going to pick up the sequel to this story. Next we have a book that I decided to reread. I read this one last year and I wanted to read it again, and that is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. Now this is interesting because when I read this one the first time around last year, I rated it 3.5 stars because I couldn't really appreciate it. I didn't really understand what was going on. I felt confused, but at the same time I felt like it had some amazing scenes in it. This time around, however, I was blown away. I don't know if it's because I've grown up. I don't know if it's because my reading tastes have changed and it has become more refined. Is that a word? But I really love this book. It has become one of my favorite tales of all time. This one deals with a man who visits a place that he visited during his childhood, and he is now in his 60s, I believe. And then we hear about his memories from this place, and these memories are strange. But believe me, this is definitely worth the read. I cannot believe I didn't really understand it back a year ago because I understood everything perfectly now, and I really appreciated this book. 5 stars for me. Next, I read a whole series, and this series is actually going to be part of my April book haul. So I haven't shown these books to you yet, but that is this series. It is the, well, now it's the tricky part because this is in Danish, but it's written by Liza Claypass, who is called the Queen of Historical Romance, I believe. Basically, this series is just called the Wallflowers series, now I think of it. I'm not going to tell you too much about my thoughts on these books because I am going to do a full video review on these novels. Basically, it's a very accessible story about some girls who decide to unite in order to find a husband for each one of these wallflowers. It's a lot of fun and it's very entertaining, but as I said, I'm going to go more into it in my video review. As for now, I can just tell you that I rated each book 3 stars. It was very interesting, very entertaining, and I'm not going to tell you anything else. And then the last book I have to talk about is also a book that is going to be part of my April book haul, and that is Life But Better by Anna Gavaldar. Now, this author is French and I know her very well. I've read a lot of her books and I love her. So when I found out that this book was coming out in Denmark in April, then I had to get it. This is one of those books that I'm also going to do a video review of, so I'm not going to go too much into my thoughts, but I loved it. Anna Gavaldar never disappoints and I gave it 4 stars. I will say though that it's about 2 characters who live in Paris, Mathilde and Jan. Then we hear about their lives. But it's so much more than that, and I'm going to go more into this story and my thoughts on it in my review, which will be up sometime next week, I believe. And that is it for my April wrap-up part 1. As usual, I will be back again in the end of April with my part 2 of this wrap-up. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Happy reading, everyone, and bye-bye.